Welcome back to the Banners broadcast. I'm Chris Grenham, and with me, as always, founder, CEO of CLNS Media, Nick Gelso. Nick, what's going on, man?
That's me. What's up? What's up, Chris?
We made
Opening
it.
Day, man.
We made it. We're finally here. Real basketball. I feel like, about a month ago we were saying we made it, but it was for preseason basketball.
Yeah.
And, preseason basketball is a weird thing where you get so excited that it's finally here, and then you watch a game or even half a game, and you're like, man, this really sucks. This really sucks. So it feels like just a couple years ago, NBA teams were playing like 8 preseason games. So 4 was nice. We had this front-loaded preseason schedule, and Brad Stevens basically got to have another training camp with his team over the last week and a half or so. And
Chris, I tend to think that this past week and a half was the real training camp.
I think so, too. I mean, people obviously didn't like the way the Celtics were playing during the preseason, but you have to think that Stevens was well aware that they had this in their back pocket. They were going to have a week and a half to prepare before the regular season started, so it's not like everything we were seeing was the real deal.
No, I mean, how many practices did they get before game 1 of preseason? Like 4?
Yeah.
3?
Not 3 maybe, and they had 2 days of training camp, really, and because then they had to travel down to North Carolina. So kind of a weird batch, but I have to think that, for a group like the Celtics with Brad Stevens, I think maybe they could benefit from it. Kind of, at least in the last couple media availabilities where we've heard players and Coach Stevens talk, it sounds like they had a great week of practice, and guys are starting to kind of push off the rust and gear up for tonight's game. We're recording this on Monday, but it will be out on Tuesday morning. So obviously we've got the season opener, the NBA opener, the first game of the NBA season, the Celtics against the Philadelphia 76ers. Those late starts,
Chris. Oh, I know, man. 8 p.m. starts, bro.
8 p.m. starts. That means
TV
a late
timeouts. Come on.
That means a late night at TD Garden, a very late night at the Garden. But basketball's back, so that's good. But before we jump into season previews, previewing tonight's game, let's talk about Terry Rozier. Obviously, there was some talk last week. Brian Robb of Boston Sports Journal broke a story that the Celtics and Rozier were in talks of a contract extension. Obviously, he's set to be a restricted free agent when the season is over, but they were not able to agree on an extension prior to the October 15th deadline, which is today when we're recording.
And why would they?
This was expected. Yeah, this was expected. Obviously, Terry Rozier accepts this extension, or they agree to one. He's probably going to lose money. You're going to want to test the market if you're Terry Rozier. So what are any thoughts surrounding that situation?
I mean, just from a point of finding out his own value, gauging his own value to test the market. I mean, but let's face it. I mean, Terry Rozier will probably walk at the end of the season, and it's not the first time a player has walked, even if the Celtics make the finals or win the championship. I mean, look at Posey walked, and in 08, and Tony Allen walked. So one thing is certain, we know Danny loves Terry, but if it's coming down to dollars and cents, if it doesn't work for the Celtics, he'll let him walk. And Kyrie's decision has to impact that slightly too.
Right.
And I think Kyrie's health throughout the season will impact that.
Yeah, it does. I mean, right now, obviously, he is the ultimate insurance policy. With Kyrie's uncertainty in health, it's not really there. The free agency uncertainty is basically gone now that he made his announcement. But I think Rozier's a guy he's going to want to be a starter, and he's going to be looking for a whole lot of money. And apparently the Celtics offered him around, I think came out today around 15 or something like that. He's looking for 20 and the opportunity to start. And with Kyrie here, that's just not going to happen. So again, there's no, animosity between the two parties here, but it's just best for both sides. And I mean, the Celtics know that he's going to want to start and he's going to want to test the market. So this was expected going forward. So it's nothing new, nothing crazy, but it's newsworthy.
It's newsworthy. Whenever Terry's name comes up, it's newsworthy.
Exactly.
Everybody loves Terry.
Terry. Yeah, Scary Terry. That's right. So while we're on the topic of extensions and on contracts, obviously we had Kyrie Irving announcing his intentions to return to Boston this summer, sign an extension, whatever that may be. And at the season tip-off gala this past week, we heard from Wyc Grousbeck, Celtics owner, talking about Kyrie's intentions. And, I've had plenty of, run-ins with Wyc and heard him talk plenty of times, but you have gotten to know his tendencies and what he's like much more than I have in years past. So how did you react? You when I talked to you after the gala, you said it was a little odd the way he spoke about Kyrie's intentions.
Just really I don't even know what the right word is. Just he was very selective in the way that deliberate in the way that he answered Normally, Wick is so charismatic,
Right.
and all smiles and happy, and and what really jumped out at me is when he said, "If I had known he was going to do it, I would have been there."
Right.
When Kyrie, and clearly in front of the whole garden full of fans, said, "I've already discussed with front office." Now maybe that means Danny and not Wick, but Danny has since said he didn't know too.
Right. He knew his intention. He didn't know when he was going to announce it. So maybe that's what Wick meant. I mean, I totally understand being cautious in what you say, just to avoid any. You don't want to cause a stir. It's pointless.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
But like continually saying, Kyrie, I don't know his exact words. He's saying he's an interesting guy, but he kept saying, "I'm getting to know Kyrie."
Yeah.
Very interesting. It wasn't the normal Wick Grossbeck kind of throwback Red Auerbach. Like, what do you mean? Of course he was going to sign. Right. No one ever leaves the Celtics. Like, you expect him to say something like that in jest, or somewhat jest.
I would like to be a fly on the wall for a conversation between Kyrie Irving and Wick Grossbeck. Those are two very different people.
Very different.
Two fascinating people in my eyes. I mean, obviously, Kyrie Irving is one of the most complex athletes on the planet, in my opinion.
Yep.
So, really, any conversation that he has, I'd like to be a fly on the wall. But Wick Grossbeck as well. So, either way, I mean, it's great news that we can kind of put the kibosh on that for the season going forward. We don't have to
be asking those questions
every single practice, every single game.
And seeing Kyrie's face every time he gets asked. And I don't know about you, Chris, and you would know better than me because you cover all the practices. But in the practices and the media availabilities, the games that I've been at, Kyrie is like a different guy with the media, at least. He
is. He seems very, I don't want to say laid back, but he seems very comfortable. I mean,
less guarded,
yeah. And maybe that's just I don't even know how to say it. It takes people time to get adjusted into new settings, and maybe it just took him a year. Obviously, last year was his first year, new city, new team. So maybe it did take him some time to let his guard down and get familiar with the media, get familiar with the team. But you're definitely right. And I saw you tweeted it this morning. He just seems very less guarded, and he's more comfortable with everyone, and it makes for some much better content. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he was never not interesting, his press scrums, but you were very, I don't know how to put it. He was to a certain extent, I'm not easily intimidated. KG intimidating, obviously. It wasn't KG intimidating, but you just didn't know what you were going to get from him night to night, and he was very, very guarded, kind of like Wick was at the Shamrock Gala. But this year, man, I mean, it's like you're seeing it. He's laughing. He's definitely more open. I think it probably is a combination of, you're right, it's a combination of getting to know the city and the team and the media as well. And then also, I think last year he came to town with all the LeBron BS going on. Mm-hmm. Probably had his guard up there because there were certain stories where maybe he could have gotten screwed or behind his back or whatever. And then I think people also forget that he's a young dude. I mean, what's he, 27?
26. He's 26,
Yeah, 26. I don't even remember 26.
He's an old 26, like he says, but still.
For sure.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And I think a lot of maybe his new ways, I don't want to say new ways, but like his less guarded mentality is kind of the same with a lot of his teammates. The Celtics didn't have their guard up last year with the media or with the fans or anything like that, but it seems like being around the team and being at practices and training camp and throughout the preseason, the mentality around this team is pretty good. And obviously there's high expectations and everyone's looking to win a championship, so it's easy to be upbeat when you have such high expectations like that. But I think being surrounded by guys with the same kind of mentality and coaching and an upbeat coaching staff, I think that's important, and that could definitely change things for a guy like Kyrie.
I think so too. I really do, and I think Brad somewhat speaks his language in a certain way.
He does.
They're both interesting guys. They're both uber intelligent. I think there's a good match there. You don't see it very often because you don't see them together very often, right? I mean, unless it's at a press table, which is also really rare, or on the court where Brad's interacting with all the players, but. There's definitely mutual respect there.
Yeah, completely. And I mean, Kyrie has called Brad Stevens a basketball genius. I think there's plenty of people that would call Kyrie himself a basketball genius.
Right.
Watch him, manipulate.
I just hope he has. I hope he could. He's not going to play 82. He's probably not even going to play 78. He may not play 75 games, but
yeah, they're gonna.
I hope that he puts in. I hope that it's short on games because they're resting him and not due to injury. Because, man, if he could stay healthy, the future ahead of him, it's dawning on me as we're talking. He's only 26 years old.
It's pretty wild. I know. He's only 26. I fully expect him to be the Celtics' leading scorer this year. That's not say, he's going to go out and score 28 a night and the rest of the Celtics are going to be
probably.
Yeah, something around there. I would agree with that. I think he's definitely their best scorer and their go-to scorer. So if he can stay healthy, that's obviously phenomenal.
Right.
And it's kind of a weird discussion talking about how many games he's going to play, and same with Gordon Hayward. Obviously, they fall into the same category of guys returning from pretty serious injuries, but I think you could see the Celtics team similar to what the Warriors do down the road, maybe resting some guys and preparing for the playoffs. They're not necessarily going to be concerned with winning 65 games if they can do that.
No, and I think with their depth, Chris, they could still win 60 games and rest
they really
Kyrie,
could.
Gordon, and Al.
You think about resting Kyrie Irving, not many teams have the luxury of then starting Terry Rozier to fill in for their starting point guard.
Right.
That's pretty nice.
Right, and Gordon, you got Jalen. So, I mean, it's that second unit or that combination of players that will be the second unit and first unit this year, but that combination of players last year got to the Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. They're so damn deep that I think that Brad Stevens can take the Popovich or the Kerr approach where they do rest guys.
Yeah.
And yet still come out on top of the conference and maybe winning 60 games.
Right, and this is a team that is obviously has their eyes on a bigger goal, so they're not worried about win totals and that kind of thing.
Anyway, Chris, we're powered today. We have a sponsor.
Powered.
Yeah, man. We got Power 1 in 100. It's a brand new way to get involved in sports and concert events. Boston sports fans, they can get killer seats to see Celtics, Bruins, Patriots, or Red Sox for the price of a beer or even a large pizza. It could even be less, Chris. People are tired of paying inflated broker prices for tickets, and now with 1 in 100
fees, rightfully so.
Oh, dude. I mean, how about when they? Never mind. I'm not going to backstop it. But go to 1in100.co. That's 1in100.co. ONEIN, the number 1, the number 0, the number 0 dot. CO. Now, how are you going to forget that? That's a unique URL. And there, the novelty in 1 in 100, you'll know, is that there's no other place online that's doing online raffles for tickets and sporting events like they are. It's a totally brand new way to get involved, try to get tickets to concerts, sporting events, even to our Celtics. So the cost potentially to score tickets with 1 in 100 is a small fraction of the actual ticket price. Score a pair of tickets for less than the cost of a beer. Your first raffle ticket is free after sign up. So, dude, you could even get into these games or concerts for free. I'm in the Elton John raffle right now because I cannot believe they're charging $300 for balcony seats at TD Garden. That's crazy. So I got in the raffle for I think $6 at 1 in 100. So go over, experience it. It's really fun and it's exciting. You can pick your own number. Get the feeling of potentially scoring premium tickets. If you're feeling lucky, go on over to 1in100.co. That's ONEIN, the number 1, the number 0, the number 0.co. Dude, they have been all over our programming, a really good partner of ours. So if you're a fan of the Banners broadcast or any CLNS programming, please check them out.
Check them out.
1in100.co.
Sticking with, how this team has looked early on and expectations going forward, what were your takeaways, general broad takeaways from the preseason? Obviously, it is the preseason. It looked pretty clunky on both sides of the ball. But staying with Kyrie and Gordon Hayward, how do you think they looked? Were they better than you thought? Were they worse than you thought? Are people overreacting? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Kyrie had a reasonably good preseason. I think he only played in two or three games.
Kyrie played in two.
Two, right?
Yep.
So, and I think in both games he was good. I mean, I wasn't taken back by anything with him. I mean, Gordon, I really have any expectations. Honestly, I didn't know what to expect, and I think there's definitely concern. I don't know concern. There's definitely a point to be watching to see how long it takes him to get back to form, but he's definitely not there yet.
Yeah, and I think
that game in Cleveland, I think, was it Cleveland or Charlotte, where Kyrie didn't play, but Gordon did, and Brad
was Cleveland.
Yeah, furiously trying to get Gordon going, and it seemed like he regressed that game a bit.
I think he is realizing, and obviously there's been some articles, and you saw the video series from The Athletic. There's been plenty
Jared
of coverage.
did a great job with that.
Yeah. There's been some great content about Gordon Hayward and his recovery, but I think he's really come to realize that it is going to be a long process. This isn't just going to be an overnight thing where he steps on the floor and he's going to be back to his old self. Of course, that no one was fully expecting that, but he's had some back problems here going forward, and he said his body is feeling better, and he's shaking off some of the rust. But it's not going to be an overnight thing, and I think that's becoming a realization for a lot of fans out there as well. Kyrie, on the other hand, I was pretty impressed with. He looked like a guy who's been waiting to step back out there for the entire offseason, and he just kind of was geared to go, and he played, 26 minutes in his second preseason game, and he sat out the last 2 because of his ribs. Who knows if there was actually a rib injury?
There we go. That was a laugh. I wasn't there. You were at the practices, but from what it seemed from watching the videos on CLNS and Celtics blog, it seemed like that was pretty much a joke.
Yeah. Either way, it got him out of those last 2 games, got him a couple days off, and avoid a trip to Cleveland. But either way, I thought Kyrie looked great. I think Gordon, it's going to take some time. Brad Stevens said on Monday after practice that they're going to probably shoot to get him around 25 minutes a game in the early going, which sounds about right. I'm sure there'll be some games where it's below that, some games where it's above that. Just really depends on the night. But again, the nice thing is they have this depth where they can afford to do that. They really can. So in terms of the regular season and how those 25 minutes are going to impact it, Brad Stevens wouldn't release a starting lineup yet. He said he's going to announce it on Tuesday night at TD Garden. So we'll have to wait and see. Who knows if they'll end up matching up big with Aaron Baines against Joel Embiid like they've done in the past. So there is actually a little bit of mystery there, more so than other nights maybe, but we'll just have to wait and see. So
before we move on, the Kyrie too, I was kind of watching Kyrie closely because, and I don't know how to say this without sounding douchey, but like with the movie and everything else, and he just seemed to be doing so much media as a Hollywood star. I'm like, is this dude working out? Well,
what's he doing?
Clearly he was, because he looks phenomenal.
He really
I was looking at it from him, less from an injury standpoint, more from,
a
is
human
he going to be
standpoint.
in shape? Yeah.
Right.
And as far as Gordon goes, no one's really talking about that second surgery. I wonder if that had anything to do with the slow start too. I mean, I don't really know. I had no expectations with Gordon.
Yeah, I think it totally could. I mean, it's clear that once he got that surgery, his ankle felt extremely better, and it was definitely needed. But again, that could have been a setback in terms of conditioning, something like that. He said today he feels like he's in game shape, but he always follows it up with a but. You're not going to really know until you're out there, which is fair, and that's pretty clear.
Well, and that's the thing too. I think it's less of course, there's injury stuff going on that confidence and being, how are you attacking the basket? How aggressive are you? Are you going in traffic? That kind of stuff. But I think equally important is the fact that the dude has not played a regular season and a professional basketball game in over a year.
Yeah, and he said this morning there's going to be some butterflies. This afternoon he said there's going to be some butterflies, and that's understandable. It's his first time in a really long time stepping out there in a meaningful game, so that's a lot of.
But
people,
he will have Eminem in his earbuds.
He will have Eminem, thanks to Josue Pavone. He will have Eminem in his earbuds, which is great, and obviously he's embraced from that video you saw, he's embraced Boston, and the fans have been great for him. He's continuously thanked Celtics fans for their support throughout his rehab, so that's really great to see.
It was, and if I remember correctly, he had a rough preseason last year too.
Yeah, I don't really remember his preseason last year. I mean, I do my best to when I move on from a preseason, I just
let it go.
I just throw it in the garbage and never look back on it again.
I think the players do too, especially this year.
I think you're right. So in that regard, let's look at the regular season. Obviously, we've got the first game Tuesday night, 8:00 at TD Garden. Sixers Celtics. It's the rivalry that the NBA is just like
back and forth.
And rightfully so. Obviously, there's some animosity, like Jason Tatum said earlier this week. There's some animosity between the two teams that's undisputable. But I think it's a great matchup to start out with. So, what do you
love Philly?
That is a. I have trouble with the Sixers. We'll put it that way. I have trouble with them. I don't think they're going to be as good this year. I think they actually might regress a little bit.
Yeah, you said that you think a step back defensively, right?
I do. I think a step back defensively. I don't really, I hope he's fully healthy, but I don't really trust Joel Embiid's durability. I don't know. We just found out Markelle Fultz is going to start tomorrow night against the Celtics. I don't know if I trust him yet to be a viable secondary scorer like they need him to be. That concerns me. So I think it's more just concerns and uncertainty that bothers me about the Sixers team. They are going to be good, and they're going to be a playoff team, obviously, and they're going to give the Celtics plenty of trouble because they're a tough matchup. They're a tough matchup for all teams. I just don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year.
I don't, far be it for me to say this because I haven't played an NBA game in my life, but it seems to me the Sixers, I said this during the playoffs last year, don't forget, I covered every game in that series.
Yeah, you did.
Including the confetti game, which was amazing. Probably one of the best games I've ever covered. But it seems to me like they just lack something in the mental toughness department.
Yeah, they're young. They're young.
And
I mean, people are going to argue this year, or at least right now, until the season gets started, that, they gained another year of experience. And that's really valuable. And it is. That is very valuable. But they lost some pretty key defensive pieces and essentially replaced them with guys like Wilson Chandler, which to me just doesn't do anything for me. It hurts them on the defensive side of the ball somewhere where it's important for a team like that because they're not going to have trouble scoring the ball. I mean, they've got a guy tomorrow night. They're going to have J.J. Redick coming off the bench.
Come on.
That's insane. That's unbelievable. So I'm not saying that the Sixers suck. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I could totally see them finishing fourth in the Eastern Conference. And that top portion of the Eastern Conference is going to be good. Like, you have the Sixers, you have the Celtics, you have the Raptors, in no particular order.
Don't sleep on the Wizards either.
The Wizards have a lot of talent. They're just, painfully, they'll forever be the Wizards, and they're stuck in mediocrity. And I grew up a Wizards fan. And
really?
I've got family in Washington. Unfortunately, I don't go around telling people I grew up a Wizards fan because
so were you a Bullets fan, or were they always the Wizards?
They were always the Wizards. So when I was growing up, it was like the end of Jordan's Wizards run, and then and then it turned into Larry Hughes and Gilbert Arenas, and that's when it was great. They would go and get smacked by LeBron every year in the playoffs, but the regular season was enjoyable. But that's not necessarily something I boast about, being a Washington Wizards fan. But
it's a very odd arena. Like, it's in the middle of the city, right?
It is. It's smack
and
in the
then
middle
you go
of the city.
in, and I'm getting us off track here, but I hope this doesn't. I don't see how it could happen with Boston Garden because the fans are just such diehard sports fans. But when you
I know
go
exactly
to
where you're going with
covering a Wizards game, it's incredible. Like, you're in the press box and there's nobody. Like, it's half empty in the middle of the playoffs. You're like, how is this possible? Then you go out downstairs to go to the bathroom or do something, and everybody's out in the bars and clubs, out in the the mezzanine areas.
You go through this weird court level club for
that's
season ticket holders, and there's music playing, and you're trying to walk through with your laptop to rush in at the end of the game, and you're bumping into some guy in a seersucker suit.
All of a sudden, and Josue and I are I think Jeremy, all three of us were there. We're like, oh man, these fans suck. And all of a sudden in the fourth quarter, the place is packed. You're like, everybody parties and gets drunk out and watch the games on monitors, and then they come in for the fourth quarter. That's just been my experience there. It's
a weird environment. I've covered games there as working, and I've been to plenty of games there as a fan, and it is weird. Like, if you go to a Wizards game on a Tuesday night against the Phoenix Suns, it's a dark place. It is not a great environment. But you get the Cavs in there, the Celtics in there on a primetime game on a Thursday or a Friday night. It's a good place to watch a game.
That's what I'm saying. It'd be like the fourth quarter, and it's empty in the third. The fourth is packed, but it's not only packed. It's packed with really drunk fans
who are
raucous and crazy. So it goes from an empty arena, and they have those lights like the Celtics just installed. Delaware North just installed the Garden, where
the theater,
the stands are very dark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's an interesting environment. But back to the standings. Back to we'll have to go through.
We'll talk about the Bullets another time.
Where we just talk about arenas and different arena experiences. But I think they're one of the most talented teams in the league. Obviously, they might have an issue with depth this year, but they brought in guys like Austin Rivers who are going to help in that category. But they're an interesting team.
Gortat was so bad last year, and
Gortat was a problem in the locker room there too. They had a lot of issues.
They had a lot of issues, and he's usually like one of those guys that you say, okay. I mean, back in the Big Three, I would want him on the Celtics.
Yeah,
he was just runs the floor great, runs the pick and roll great. He looks like a good teammate, but man, he has something to prove this year. So they could be lethal. That top half of the Eastern Conference, everybody's sleeping on them.
They are. So where do you see a team like the Wizards finishing? Give me your top 5 of Eastern Conference?
My top 5 would probably be Boston, Toronto, Philadelphia, Milwaukee.
Okay.
And then probably Washington, and then the also-rans.
Yeah, see, this is where it gets kind of interesting for me, is that bottom portion of the top tier. Because I have the same thing. I've got the Celtics and the Raptors. Then I've got the Bucks. I think the Bucks will finish third. Just Budenholzer as their coach. I think that coaching change makes
very
massive difference. Yeah. And then I would have the Sixers in fourth. But 5 and 6
Miami
gets interesting because you've got. I think the Pacers and the Wizards will probably vie for 5.
I even forgot the Pacers existed,
and they're good. The Pacers have a good team.
Man,
I know, but again, that's a team that everyone kind of sleeps on, and you could see them beating up on those lower tier teams in the East and sneaky winning 50 plus games. I would not be surprised by that at all.
Wow.
So the Eastern Conference. Even though it's the little brother to the West, it's still going to be interesting. And I call me crazy, but I do really enjoy watching like a Pacers-Knicks game in the middle of the week. Maybe I've got a problem and I watch an unhealthy amount of NBA League Pass. But
dude, you live in the North End. Like, go get a good dinner.
Well,
Don't watch the Pacers and the Knicks, man. Don't you get tired of working?
Maybe I'll get it. I'll get some pasta to go. I'll bring it back to my apartment, and I'll watch Pacers Knicks. I'll do that. But either way, I think the East is going to be really interesting this year, and obviously this first matchup, Sixers-Celtics, is going to be marquee. So I talked to you about this earlier in the preseason, a little bit during training camp. What are your expectations for, say, the first month, like the early going? I know you had hinted at maybe seeing the Celtics come out of the gates a little bit slow. What are you thinking for the first month or so?
I still think it's going to be a rough go at the start, and I think typical Boston radio out here, the fans are going to be cliff jumping. I just feel it. I feel like they gelled so well last year that, and you're not adding in 2 role players here. You're adding in a superstar, a borderline superstar, trying to recover and prove something, and a quality role player.
Right.
So you're almost changing the whole team. So I just think there's going to be an adjustment period. And I think I never want to ever insinuate that the Gordon injury was a good thing. Of course it wasn't, but it did galvanize them.
Right.
For 16 straight games. So, and Kyrie was just unstoppable during that period. So I think they'll be slow out of the gates. Now, I was one of the guys last year who had them at 500 entering December.
Right.
I don't know. I learned from that, so I don't know that I'll make that prediction right now, but I think it's going to be less obvious how much better they are than the rest of the pack, probably until mid-season. And I mean, that's just my thought. And
yeah, I can totally see that. I mean, it's going to take some meshing. It's going to take some time, and everyone, that kind of sentiment has been just beaten to death here because everyone knows it's going to take some time. But it is the truth, and I think it's important for people not to panic right off the bat because this team can afford to do that. They can afford to kind of figure it out and feel this out in the early going, and then really step it up. Come maybe it is early-ish, maybe it's still November, December, but it might be a slow start here, and that wouldn't really surprise me at all. I think starting right off the bat, they go Sixers, Raptors, and they play 3 games. They play 3 games in 5 days, so it's not an easy
I'm going to
start.
tell you, I could see them coming out of that stretch at 500.
I wouldn't be surprised either. I'm also, just quick side note, I'm so excited to see the Raptors. I have no idea what to really expect there.
I don't know what to expect there.
I can't wait to see Nick Nurse's group because I think Nick Nurse is a great coach.
Yeah, you always say that.
Yeah, and I do. Of course, I'm with everyone else. Everyone wants to see Kawhi Leonard, that's obvious. But that'll be fun. But I totally am with you there on a potential slow start.
That's an L to me because the Celtics always suck in Toronto. I mean, back to the Garnett era, they just suck there. I mean, that's a tough place to play, period. Mm-hmm. But I could really see them dropping that game. I could see them opening the season 0-2.
Really?
That's not a hot take. I mean, they were 0-2 last year opening the season. I really could. I could see Philadelphia coming in with something to prove.
Yeah, I think they're going to be pretty juiced.
Yeah, Toronto, I mean, what is it? 2 nights and 3 games. It's in Toronto.
Yeah, it's three games in 5 days, which is tough.
And then on top of that, they have pinned as much as their talent has done it, they themselves have pinned a bullseye on themselves with all the trash talk.
Completely.
I mean, it's just stupid in my opinion. Like I love swagger and trash talk midway through the season when you're coasting to win after win after win. But in preseason, you're just asking for trouble.
I think a lot of that would have been pinned on them either way, but you're right. It clearly did not help.
It doesn't help when Marcus Morris. I love it.
Yeah.
It's part of why I love covering the NBA. The drama is amazing.
It's the best.
When Marcus Morris is Twitter fighting, and it's just. And Marcus Smart is really fighting. Yeah. It's
fun. That Marcus Smart, J.R. Smith beef goes back quite a while. It goes back to Jay Crowder getting injured.
Yep.
It goes way back. But I think it's nice that there's still a little bit of juice between those two teams because the Cavs aren't going to have much excitement this year per se. But I think it's nice that the Celtics can still look forward to a little rivalry there, in my opinion at least.
Yeah, I mean, at least Cleveland showed up for those 2 games. The Celtics didn't even show up.
No, the Celtics.
And Cleveland, like I'm saying, I'm thinking similarly with Philadelphia, although they're obviously a way more talented team.
Yeah.
But they're going to come into that game really ready to kick butt because they got embarrassed in the playoffs by the Celtics last year.
They did. Jason Tatum adding on to the trash talk.
I did love that.
He said he told Joel Embiid when they worked out with Drew Hanlon this summer that, they should have swept him, which was great. But again,
the other thing I loved too was, and you were there at the Shamrock event with him and Kyrie, busting each other, and then Kyrie comes back with, but I went number 1 after 14 games or whatever.
It was so great.
And Jason's like, Danny's screwed that up.
It's Danny's fault. I didn't go number 1. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, and you don't see that side of him very often.
You don't.
Jason.
You don't. You see it off camera. If you're in the locker room, you see him messing around, but he's very shy when it comes to in front of the camera.
He's either shy or really well trained.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a little bit of both because he is shy, but he's got that Duke in him where he's just bred to be an NBA star who manages everything perfectly, absolutely perfectly. So, you think they're going to lose tomorrow night or tonight if you're listening on Tuesday?
I'm not predicting it. I'm saying it could happen.
It could happen.
I sound like Charles Barkley.
Either way, it'll be a great matchup. Obviously, it's a rivalry that everyone loves, and the NBA is pushing. We'll get it on Christmas Day too, which I think is ridiculous that they gave the Celtics and the Sixers the same game on opening night and Christmas. It's like they're force feeding it to.
Well, and after 50 years of of traveling on Christmas Day, the Celtics now have 2 years in a row where they home openers at home. That hasn't happened in about 5 years, and where they're traveling or they're not traveling on Christmas.
Right.
That was always Celtics. When I was growing up, Christmas was always Celtics, Sixers, Lakers, Houston.
Right. That was it.
Yeah. It was always the doubleheader.
Yeah. I think the NBA really missed a good opportunity to make it Celtics, Lakers on Christmas Day. I think that would have been awesome. That would have been pretty epic, I think. Yeah, it would have been fun. Anytime you get LeBron, and now he's wearing yellow and purple and gold. Come on. Oh my God!
What do you think? Do you think where do you have them this year?
I think they're going to fall towards the bottom tier. Maybe they're going to make the playoffs. I think, but I think they'll be towards the bottom half of the West. Maybe up towards like 6. But I don't hate this team.
I mean, just think that's how good LeBron is.
It is, but I really don't hate. I don't hate this team as much as everyone else does. But LeBron alone is such a factor. It's ridiculous. But I like this young core around him. I think he can really help guys like Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball. Ball with Rajon Rondo. Yeah.
If he keeps his head on straight, Rondo could really assist Ball quite a bit.
Agreed.
I just hope that LeBron doesn't sabotage Luke Walton because he's a really good coach.
I think this is the first time where he's finally with. I've said this before, but he's
Spoelstra. I think he bowed down a bit.
And I think I think LeBron now, for the first time in his career, is playing somewhere where the team and the franchise is bigger than
his brand.
Yeah, and that's a first for him, but I think he realizes that. And so I
think you said that on one of our films.
I think I did, yeah.
Because I've heard that before, and it's a great... You should do a column on that. It's a great
really,
storyline.
And I think he realizes that, and if he doesn't, Magic Johnson is going to force him to realize that. And so I think that's going to prevent him from doing that to Luke Walton. I think Luke Walton's a good player's coach. I hope they give him a chance.
I hope so, too. I mean, I didn't hear him, joking in the media. It's joking, so don't anybody think it's serious, but... joking in the media that Walton's out and Magic will be on the bench by mid-season.
Yeah, that would be something. That would be something. I think my brain would explode if I were to.
But it would make for great showtime. I mean, they may not win games, but it would be great entertainment.
Yeah, it really would. It really would. All right, well, I think we can wrap it up there because we could talk about projections. We could talk about all this. What's your win total guess? Let's just take a quick estimate of win total for the Celtics before we go here.
I'm going to say 58 wins.
58 wins, okay.
Which is 2 less than I said last week, so they're losing wins.
Yeah, right now. I think they're slowly. When we talk tomorrow at the Garden, it'll be 52.
It'll be 56.
yeah. I think right around there is probably good. I'm going to say 59 or 60, somewhere around there. But it really depends on how much they're resting guys in the middle of the season. How much they're kind of managing their team going forward. Because Golden State is a team that could win 70 games a year, no problem, but they don't care about the regular season. They know that they've got to manage themselves going into the playoffs and
they learned that in their 70-win season. I mean, that's
when
they win it. And don't forget, Celtics fans, it is a tough. Last year, it was a tough second half of the season, but the schedule's tough. And I think they go out west very early this year.
Do, yeah.
They're on the road a lot.
Yep.
So it could be. Not an ugly, but a kind of an average
start
for where our expectations are first half of the season.
Yeah, agreed. And that could happen with plenty of teams in the NBA, but especially a group adding in 2 All-Stars to a lineup that was already pretty good last year. So again, opening night is here. Celtics Sixers, 8 o'clock, TD Garden. Nick, I'll see you there, man.
Dude, I will see you there. I'm off
good.
to the Garden.